Welcome to Sleep and Absorb. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let yourself relax. Tonight, we explore coral reefs.
Imagine slipping beneath the surface of the ocean somewhere in the tropics. You descend a meter or two, and the world above, the sky, the wind, the noise of everything that happens on land, recedes into a pale shimmer behind you. And beneath you, spreading in every direction as far as you can see, is a city. Not a city built by human hands. A city built by animals smaller than your fingernail over thousands of years, into structures of extraordinary complexity and beauty. Towers and archways and gardens and sheltered passages, all of it teeming with life, color, movement. Fish in colors that seem to have no practical purpose beyond being beautiful, darting between formations of coral in shades of orange and purple and electric blue. Sea turtles moving with a slow, unhurried authority that suggests they have been here considerably longer than you have, which they have. This is the Coral Reef. Covering less than 1% of the ocean floor, it supports approximately 25% of all marine species on Earth. The productivity and biodiversity of a reef rivals that of a tropical rainforest. And like the rainforest, it is built not from soil and rainfall and sunlight alone, but from a relationship. A partnership between species that has been refined over hundreds of millions of years into something of extraordinary elegance. And tonight we are going to spend 20 minutes with the coral reef. What it is, how it builds itself, the remarkable life within it, and what its future holds. Let your breathing slow, and let that warm, filtered light settle around you. Most people, when they think of coral, picture the hard, branching, colorful structures that form the architecture of the reef. These are real, but the word coral refers not primarily to those structures, but to the animals that build them. A coral polyp is a small, soft-bodied animal related to sea anemones and jellyfish, typically only a few millimeters across. It has a simple body plan, a cylindrical tube with a mouth at the top, surrounded by tentacles used to catch tiny floating organisms called zooplankton. By night, the polyp extends those tentacles and feeds. By day, it retreats into its skeleton and relies on something else entirely. Living within the tissues of each coral polyp are microscopic algae called zooxanthellae. These algae are photosynthetic. They capture the energy of sunlight and use it to produce sugars, and they share those sugars with the coral animal that hosts them. In a nutrient-poor tropical ocean where food is scarce, this internal solar panel is what makes the extraordinary productivity of the reef possible. The coral provides the algae with shelter and the carbon dioxide they need for photosynthesis. The algae provide the coral with up to 90% of its energy needs. It is one of the most important symbiotic relationships on Earth. The color of living coral, the vivid greens and browns and golds, comes almost entirely from these zooxanthellae. The skeletal structures of the coral itself are white. It is the algae living within the tissue that give the reef its color, which is why coral bleaching, the process by which coral under thermal stress expels its zooxanthellae, turns the reef white. A bleached reef is not dead, but it is a reef under severe stress, running on depleted energy reserves, vulnerable to disease and capable of dying if the conditions that cause the bleaching do not improve within weeks. A coral reef is not built quickly. Coral grows at rates that vary between species and conditions, but generally between 1 and 25 centimeters per year for branching corals, and far less for the massive, dome-shaped corals that form the solid foundations of the reef structure. The Great Barrier Reef, the largest reef system on Earth, stretching over 2,300 kilometers along the northeast coast of Australia, has been growing in its current form for approximately 20,000 years, since the end of the last ice age when sea levels rose to their current position. Its oldest foundations are far older still. The structure of a reef is layered in a way that reflects the history of its construction. The living coral is only at the surface. Beneath it, sometimes to depths of hundreds of meters, is the accumulated calcium carbonate skeleton of countless generations of coral that lived and died and left their structures behind. A reef is, in a very real sense, a living organism growing on the bones of its ancestors. Different zones of the reef support different communities of species. The shallow reef crest, exposed to the full force of breaking waves, is dominated by robust, wave-resistant corals and supports the highest densities of fish. The reef slope, dropping away into deeper water, hosts different coral species adapted to lower light. The sheltered lagoon behind the reef crest is calmer and shallower, with its own distinct community of soft corals, sea grasses, and the juvenile fish that shelter there before moving to the outer reef as adults. Every structural feature of the reef, every overhang and crevice and channel is occupied. The reef offers real estate in 3 dimensions, and evolution has filled every available niche with something adapted to exploit it. Moray eels inhabit the deep crevices. Cleaner shrimps set up stations at regular points on the reef where larger fish queue up to have parasites removed from their gills and scales, a service so valuable that even predatory fish do not eat the cleaners while being cleaned. Parrotfish scrape algae from coral surfaces with beaks strong enough to bite through limestone, excreting the ground coral as the fine white sand that forms the beaches of tropical islands. The world's coral reefs are in serious trouble. This is not alarmism. It is the consensus of the scientific community that studies them, and it is supported by decades of systematic monitoring data. The primary threat is ocean warming. Coral bleaching events, once rare, have become dramatically more frequent as global ocean temperatures have risen. The Great Barrier Reef experienced mass bleaching events in 2016, 2017, 2020, 2022, and 2024, each one killing significant proportions of coral across hundreds of kilometers of reef. The intervals between bleaching events are now too short in many areas for full recovery before the next event occurs. Ocean acidification compounds the threat. As the ocean absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it becomes more acidic. More acidic water makes it harder for coral to build its calcium carbonate skeleton, and in some projections, the chemistry of the ocean will become corrosive to coral skeletons entirely within this century. And yet the reef is not without resilience. Some coral populations have shown the capacity to adapt to warmer conditions. Research programs are identifying heat-tolerant coral strains that bleach less severely and recover more quickly. Reef restoration programs, growing coral in underwater nurseries, and transplanting it to damaged sections of reef are operating at scale in multiple countries. The science of reef conservation has advanced rapidly, driven by urgency. The reef that exists in 50 years will be different from the reef that exists today. How different depends on choices being made right now at scales from the individual to the global. But the reef has survived for hundreds of millions of years through ice ages and mass extinctions and asteroid impacts. its capacity to endure, given any reasonable chance, should not be underestimated. Let yourself drift back to that warm, shallow water for a moment. The light filtering down through the surface above you. The slow movement of fish between the coral formations. The faint sound of parrotfish grazing somewhere nearby. The extraordinary aliveness of everything around you. Each creature going about a life governed by rules refined over millions of years, fitting together with everything else in a web of dependency so intricate it could not have been designed, only evolved. The reef does not know it is beautiful. It does not know it is extraordinary. It simply is what it is, doing what it has always done, building and feeding and spawning and dying in the warm, clear water. And there is something in that unself-consciousness that is worth sitting with for a moment. The most complex and beautiful things often have no awareness of themselves. They simply exist, fully and completely in the present. Let your breathing slow now. You are safe. You are resting. And somewhere in warm and sunlit water, the reef is going about its ancient business, as it always has. Good night.